Hi, this is Ben from Urban Brain Studios, and I am the lead programmer on ChatMapper. I thought I would go through and show you some of the things you can do to enhance your conversations using the built-in scripting system. In the first tutorial, we showed you how to do some of these simple conditions and things like that, but now I'm going to go a bit more in depth. We use Lua as the language, so if you already know Lua, you've got a head start, but if not, don't worry too much. It's pretty easy to learn. I'm going to start with the tutorial we did in the first video. Here's the project. If you remember, it's called The Amulet, and the player Charlene is here in the village trying to find out where the amulet is. The two main goals of this conversation, one is to find out where to go next, and it's the Great Cave, and number two, to receive your weapons for the journey. Now what I'm going to do is add a few things to this using the scripting system to make it a little bit more realistic of a game you might be making. So the first thing I'm going to do is, when you normally go into a conversation, okay, here's like an introduction node. The chief said the amulet would be in this village. Okay, but maybe you don't want to say that every single time you choose this conversation. So I'm going to choose this node and I'm going to change the false action under the conditions to pass through. And I'm going to put a condition, display this node only once. Now what this does is, the next time you come through here, it's been displayed once already. Normally when you add this condition, it'll just block this and everything following it. But because we put pass through, it'll just pretend that this node was never even there. Let's go ahead and test that to see how it works. Here's the amulet. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Village Child and the Protector. And now I have the option to leave. There we go, and here's the conversation again. If I click back in, notice it just goes back to the menu. It doesn't do the introduction node again. That's nice. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, instead of just ignoring this introduction, I'm going to give an alternate one. So I'm going to change this back to block, and I'm going to add a sibling node by right-clicking and choosing New Sibling Dialog. And now I'm going to say something like, I should come back once I have the amulet. Just a reminder that we shouldn't be here, right away after talking to the Protector and the child. So the problem here, though, is the first time through, both of these nodes are valid and therefore will be presented as a menu, and we don't want that. So what we can do is use a concept of condition priorities. I'm going to set the priority on the I should come back to below normal. And what that does is, if both of these are true, it'll just pick the highest priority to display first. So that'll be this one. Then the next time through, the conditions for this will be false. So this will be the only option, and that's what's displayed. So let's see how that works now. The amulet. I'm going to talk to the two people I need to get out of here. Ready to go. Okay, and now I click back in. I should come back once I have the amulet. Okay, so that works how we expect it to now. Now I'm going to get a little bit more fancy by adding in some items, locations, and some more advanced conditions. So first, remember down here, this leave option is available after we've chosen node 3 and node 9. And just a note about these sim status things, each asset gets a hidden field called status that you can use for whatever you want, just as a general purpose tag, and I'll show you more about that later. But sim status is a special one that applies to dialogue nodes, and that gets set automatically when the simulation's running. So whenever you select something and it's displayed, then the sim status gets set to was displayed, and that's why these work the way they do. So here we're saying I want the leave option to be available if the dialogue 3 has been displayed and dialogue 9 has been displayed. But I think a little more robust way of doing that would be to actually set variables, and you'll see why. It just makes more sense. Here, you need to retrieve your weapons, and here you need to learn about the Great Cave. So I'm actually going to do that explicitly. First, I'm going to change this new item to weapons. And I'm going to add a new item. I'm going to call it amulet. I'm going to use that later. Locations, I'm going to change new location to Great Cave. Okay, now we're set. If you notice these default fields for these items, you know, these are great, but it would be really nice if we had one that was a checkbox that was called something like in inventory, and we could check on whether or not we have it in our inventory. And you can do that pretty easily. Go to Project Settings, and go to Custom Asset Fields tab. And here you can see all of the types of assets, here are items. And if you notice, these fields over here are actually defined here in the table. You have 3 required fields that you cannot delete or change, but you also have these custom fields, and we're going to add a new one. I'm going to call it in inventory. And the type I'm going to change to Boolean, which is a true-false value. And the default value is going to be false. And this show checkbox, if that's checked, it'll actually show this field in the assets browser, kind of like age and gender. But I'll just leave it unchecked for now. Okay, and notice there is our new asset field. So I can manipulate this through the scripting language, and here's how I'm going to do it. Once you say I'm here to retrieve my weapons, and he says here you are, I'm going to go to the script editor, and I'm going to actually I'm just going to drag in the weapons asset, and I'm going to say dot in inventory equals true. Okay, so any of these assets you can just drag into the script editor. Item weapons refers to the weapons item. That makes sense. The dot notation is used to indicate a field or access a field. So of this item, I'm accessing the in inventory field, which we just created, and I'm setting it to true. So now I can use this in inventory later on with conditions to determine whether or not I actually have the weapons. Notice that now I have this little pink dot, and that shows me that I have a script attached to that node. Blue dots indicate conditions are attached to the node. So I can quickly just see by looking at the tree which nodes have conditions and which have scripts. And just because I'm feeling nice, once you get the weapons, I'm going to increase your score, your points. So you'll notice here in variables, this variable comes with any new project points. What I'm going to do is under script editor, I'm going to drag this in as well. And if you're familiar with other programming languages, you might expect to be able to do something like plus equals 100. But unfortunately in Lua, you cannot do that. So we have to do equals and then points again plus 100. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is on node 4 here, where you learn about the Great Cave, I'm going to use something called mutual status. So under script editor, I'm going to add set mutual status. And what this does is it's kind of like the status field on all of the assets that you can set to whatever you want. But the mutual status sets a status between 2 different assets. So for example, asset 1, I'm going to make Charlene, and asset 2, I'm going to make the Great Cave. And my status tag is going to be learned about. And I can access this mutual status later for conditions. And what I'm going to do is actually show you how to do that on node 11, where remember the conditions were 3 and 9 have been displayed. I'm going to make that a little more intuitive now. I'm going to add the weapons dot in inventory equals true, and I use the double equals for condition, single equals for a script to actually set it to a value. And here's where I'm going to do my mutual status condition. Charlene and the Great Cave learned about. So now this makes a little more sense to me. I'm going to allow the player to leave this area if you have the weapons in your inventory and Charlene has learned about the Great Cave. So I'm going to save this and go ahead and simulate.